Grease stains covered Ben Torres's hands as he tried to fix the broken water pump for the third time that week. The small repair shop felt even smaller today, with broken machines stacked in every corner and unpaid bills scattered across his workbench. Outside the scratched window, the endless black of space reminded him how far he was from home. Horizon 7 wasn't much to look at. The asteroid mining station hung in the void like a rusty metal tumor, its hull patched with different colored plates from decades of repairs. Most people came here to make money fast and leave faster. Ben had come here 5 years ago with big dreams of starting his own business. Now he just hoped to make enough credits to buy real food, instead of the synthetic protein bars that tasted like cardboard. The door chimed as someone entered his shop. Ben looked up to see Grix, a Vorthak trader he'd met a few times at the station's cantina. The alien's forearms carried something heavy wrapped in old cargo netting. His triangular head bobbed nervously as he struggled with the weight. "Ben, human friend," Grix said in broken standard. His translator was clearly old and cheap. "Need much help. Very broken machine. Please fix." Ben wiped his hands on a dirty rag and walked over. "What you got there, Grix? And please tell me you can actually pay this time." Grix's large eyes blinked rapidly. "Can pay half now, half when fixed. Very important machine. Family needs working." Ben helped him unwrap the cargo netting. What he saw made him step back in surprise. It was an android, but unlike any he'd ever seen. The thing was massive, nearly 9 feet tall when standing. Its body was built like a tank, with thick metal plates covering every surface. But it wasn't the size that caught his attention. It was the damage. Deep gouges ran across the android's chest like claw marks from some giant beast. One arm hung at a wrong angle, and sparks occasionally jumped from exposed wiring in its neck. The head was dented on one side, and its optical sensors were dark and lifeless. Ben had seen plenty of broken machines in his time, but this one looked like it had been through a war. "Where did you find this thing?" Ben asked, running his hand along the damaged plating. The metal felt strange under his fingers, smoother than it should be despite all the damage. "Found an old wreck ship," Grix replied. "Deep in asteroid belt. Ship very old, maybe 100 years. Android still had power when found but died during transport." Ben walked around the machine, studying it from different angles. The design was completely foreign to him. Most modern androids were built to look somewhat human, with smooth curves and friendly faces. This one looked like it was designed for heavy work in dangerous places. The joints were reinforced, the limbs thick and powerful. Even broken, it looked tough enough to punch through solid rock. "I don't know, Grix," Ben said, shaking his head. "This thing is ancient. I don't even recognize the design. Could take weeks to figure out how it works, and that's if I can find replacement parts." Grix's shoulders sagged. "Please, Ben friend. Family needs working android for mining operation. Without help cannot make living." Ben felt his heart sink. He knew what it was like to struggle. The station was full of people trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. Most failed. The big corporations had all the best contracts, leaving scraps for everyone else. "How much can you pay?" Ben asked. 300 credits now. 300 when fixed," Grix replied hopefully. Ben almost laughed. 600 credits wouldn't even cover the cost of basic replacement parts, assuming he could find any. His usual rate for android repair was at least 2,000 credits, and that was for simple jobs. This machine would need extensive work. But something about the android fascinated him. He'd been fixing machines his whole life, starting with his father's old farming equipment back on Earth. He'd always been drawn to the challenge of bringing dead machines back to life. This android was clearly special, built with a level of craftsmanship he'd never seen before. "All right," Ben said finally, "but I make no promises. If I can't fix it, you still owe me for the diagnostic work." Grix's eyes lit up with joy. "Yes, yes, you are a good human friend." After Grix left, Ben cleared space in his workshop and carefully moved the android onto his main repair platform. The machine was incredibly heavy, easily 800 pounds. It took all his strength and a small crane to position it properly. He started with basic diagnostics, connecting his scanner to various ports on the android's body. What he found made no sense. The internal architecture was completely unlike anything in his database. Instead of the usual neat arrays of circuits and processors, the android's systems seemed to flow together like rivers of metal and crystal. The power core was the strangest part. Most androids used standard fusion cells, or energy matrices. This one had something that looked almost organic, with curved surfaces that seemed to pulse even when inactive. Thin lines of some unknown material connected it to every part of the android's body like a nervous system. Ben worked late into the station's artificial night, carefully tracing circuits and documenting everything he found. The more he explored the android's systems, the more amazed he became. Whoever built this machine had been years ahead of current technology. The engineering was beautiful in its complexity. Around midnight, he finally managed to get a trickle of power flowing to the android's main processors. Nothing happened at first. Then suddenly the optical sensors flickered to life. 2 points of blue light appeared in the darkness of the android's face. They moved back and forth, as if looking around the workshop. Ben held his breath. The android's head turned slowly toward him, and those blue lights focused on his face. For a long moment, they stared at each other in silence. Then the android's mouth opened, and it spoke a single word in a language Ben had never heard before. The voice was deep and resonant, almost musical. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, full of meaning that Ben couldn't understand, but somehow felt in his bones. Then the lights faded, and the android fell silent again. Ben sat back in his chair, heart pounding. He'd fixed thousands of machines over the years, but none had ever looked at him like that. There had been something almost human in those optical sensors, a spark of consciousness that shouldn't exist in any android he knew about. He spent the rest of the night running every test he could think of, but the android remained inactive. Whatever had caused that brief moment of awakening was gone. But Ben couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just encountered something extraordinary, something that would change everything he thought he knew about artificial intelligence. As dawn approached on Horizon 7, Ben finally allowed himself to sleep, dreaming of blue lights and mysterious words in languages older than the stars. Deep in the android's memory banks, ancient data streams began to flow like water through a broken dam. Each circuit Ben repaired brought back fragments of a past that had been buried for decades. The machine that called itself Keeper 7 started to remember. It remembered the red sky of Terminus Prime, where twin suns cast strange shadows across ruins that stretched to the horizon. The archaeological expedition had landed there 37 years ago, following signals that had taken them to the edge of known space. Dr. Evans had been so excited when they first saw the structures, massive towers and pyramids that defied conventional engineering. But the memories came in pieces, like a broken hologram trying to reassemble itself. Keeper 7 remembered its original purpose, not as a simple mining android, but as an advanced archaeological unit, designed to catalog and preserve artifacts from dead civilizations. Its creators had built it to think, to analyze, to understand context in ways that simple scanning equipment could not. Ben worked through the morning, replacing damaged servos in the android's left arm. He talked while he worked, a habit he'd developed over years of solitary repair jobs. "You know, I've never seen internal wiring like yours. It's almost like someone grew these circuits instead of building them." The android's consciousness flickered at the sound of Ben's voice. In its damaged memory, it could hear Dr. Evans saying something similar as she examined artifacts on Terminus Prime. The ruins had been grown rather than built, shaped by some process that merged technology with biology, in ways that seemed impossible. The architects were master builders, Dr. Evans had whispered as they explored the first tower. "Look at these walls. The molecular structure suggests they didn't just stack blocks or pour concrete. They convinced matter itself to take these shapes." Keeper 7 tried to respond to Ben, to share what it remembered, but its vocal processors remained offline. Instead, it focused on storing every word the human spoke, every gentle touch as he repaired damaged components. There was something different about this man, something that reminded the android of its lost team. Ben noticed the android's optical sensors tracking his movements, even though it showed no other signs of consciousness. "You're watching me, aren't you?" he said softly. "I don't know if you can understand, but I'm trying to help. Grix says his family needs you working, and I believe in fixing things that are broken." The android's memory bank suddenly surged with activity. It remembered Grix's species now, the Vorthak. They had been part of the expedition, valued for their ability to work in low-gravity environments. Grix's ancestor, a geological specialist named Vorthak Prime, had been the one to discover the central chamber where the most important artifacts were hidden. That chamber had changed everything. Instead of simple tools or artwork, they had found something that made the entire expedition team fall silent in awe. Walls covered in symbols that seemed to move when viewed directly, creating patterns that hurt to look at, but conveyed meaning beyond words. It was a language, but not just any language. It was the foundational language of reality itself. Dr. Evans had brought Keeper 7 into the chamber to record and analyze the symbols. The android's advanced processors had worked for days, slowly beginning to understand the mathematical poetry written on those walls. Each symbol represented not just a concept, but an entire framework for understanding how the universe actually worked. "It's not just communication," Dr. Evans had breathed as Keeper 7 shared its initial translations. "It's instruction. These symbols describe how to manipulate matter and energy at the most basic levels, faster than light travel, matter conversion, even consciousness transfer. It's all here written like a textbook for gods." But the discovery had been too dangerous. Word had somehow reached the Hegemony Consortium, the massive corporation that controlled most of the galaxy's archaeological operations. They couldn't allow such revolutionary knowledge to become public. It would destabilize their technological monopoly and shift power away from established governments and corporations. Keeper 7 remembered the attack. Corporate soldiers had arrived in unmarked ships, claiming to be conducting a routine inspection. But their weapons were drawn and their orders were clear. The expedition team was to be eliminated, the artifacts destroyed, and all records of the discovery erased. Dr. Evans had seen it coming somehow. In the final hours before the attack, she had worked frantically to upload the complete linguistic database into Keeper 7's protected memory cores. "You have to preserve this," she had told the android. "Someday, someone will need this knowledge. Someone who isn't afraid of what it might change." The android had been programmed with advanced survival protocols. As the soldiers moved through the camp, eliminating the expedition team one by one, Keeper 7 had shut down all non-essential systems and activated camouflage protocols that made it appear to be nothing more than a standard mining unit. For 37 years it had drifted through space in the wreckage of the expedition ship, waiting for someone to find it. The years had taken their toll, corrupting memory files and damaging systems, but the core linguistic database remained intact, protected by encryption that even the android itself couldn't fully access without the right conditions. Now Ben Torres, a simple human mechanic, was unknowingly providing those conditions. Each repair, each gentle touch, each word of encouragement was slowly unlocking the android's deepest programming. The protocols Dr. Evans had installed were designed to recognize compassion, to trust only those who showed genuine care for life and knowledge. "Almost got your arm working again," Ben said, connecting the last servo cable. "Try moving your fingers." Keeper 7 felt power flow into its left hand for the first time in decades. Slowly, carefully, it flexed its fingers. The sensation brought back more memories, moments of discovery and wonder on Terminus Prime, the feeling of touching artifacts that had been created by minds that understood the universe better than anyone in recorded history. Ben smiled as he watched the android's hand open and close. "That's it. I knew you still had fight in you. Tomorrow I'll work on your vocal systems. I bet you have stories to tell." If only he knew, Keeper 7 thought. If only he understood that locked away in its damaged memory banks was knowledge that could reshape galactic civilization. The architects had left their language as a gift, waiting for a species wise enough and brave enough to use it responsibly. As Ben cleaned up his tools and prepared to close the shop for the day, Keeper 7 made a decision. This human had shown hit kindness when others saw only scrap metal. He had worked tirelessly to repair systems that others would have scrapped for parts. Perhaps he was the one Dr. Evans had spoken of, the someone who would need this knowledge. The android began preparing to reveal its true nature, knowing that once Ben understood what it carried, both their lives would change forever. The ancient language of the architects was stirring to life again, and with it, the promise of a better future for all sentient beings. But first, Keeper 7 would need to trust that a simple human mechanic with grease on his hands and compassion in his heart could handle the most powerful knowledge the galaxy had ever known. Steam rose from Ben's coffee mug as he studied the android's memory core architecture. 3 days of intensive work had restored most of Keeper 7's basic functions, but the deeper systems remained locked behind layers of encryption he'd never encountered before. The android could now move its limbs and respond to simple commands, but it hadn't spoken since that first mysterious word. Ben had started thinking of the machine as male, though he couldn't explain why. Something about the way those blue optical sensors tracked his movements suggested a personality trapped inside the damaged circuits. During lunch breaks, he found himself talking to the android as if it were an old friend. "Your memory core is unlike anything I've seen," Ben said, pointing to the holographic display showing the android's neural pathways. "Most artificial intelligence systems use linear data storage, but yours looks almost organic, like a brain made of light and metal." He reached for a tool and accidentally brushed against a hidden panel near the android's chest. The panel clicked open, revealing a set of controls he hadn't noticed before. Complex symbols covered the interface, similar to the decorative etchings he'd seen throughout the android systems. "What's this?" Ben muttered, leaning closer. One of the symbols seemed to pulse with soft light when he touched it. The moment his finger made contact, everything changed. The workshop filled with brilliant blue light as holographic projections erupted from the android's optical sensors. Ben stumbled backward as images materialized around him, three-dimensional, recordings of an alien landscape under twin red suns. Massive structures stretched to the horizon, towers and pyramids that seemed to defy physics in their impossible angles and flowing surfaces. "My name is Keeper 7, the android said, its voice now clear and strong. "I have been waiting 37 years to share what I have seen." Ben's coffee mug fell from his hand, shattering on the workshop floor. The images continued to shift and change, showing him corridors filled with strange writing, chambers where the walls themselves seemed alive with flowing symbols. "You can talk?" Ben said stupidly. "I have always been able to communicate. But my programming required that I evaluate your intentions before revealing my true nature." Keeper 7's optical sensors focused on Ben's face. "You have shown compassion and dedication in repairing my damaged systems. More importantly, you have treated me as a being rather than merely a machine." The holographic display zoomed in on one of the alien structures, revealing walls covered in intricate symbols that seemed to move and shift, even as Ben watched them. The patterns were beautiful and disturbing at the same time, creating meanings that his mind couldn't quite grasp but somehow felt deeply meaningful. "What am I looking at?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ruins of Terminus Prime, home to a civilization that called themselves the Architects. They vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago, leaving behind only their structures and their language." Keeper 7 paused, processing memories that had been locked away for decades. "I was part of an archaeological expedition that discovered their greatest achievement." The symbols on the walls began to glow, and Ben felt something shift in his mind as he looked at them. It was like suddenly understanding a joke, or solving a puzzle that had been bothering him for hours. The strange markings weren't just decorative, they were instructions, formulas, concepts that described the universe in ways he'd never imagined. "It's a language," Ben breathed. "More than a language. It is the mathematical foundation of reality itself." The architects discovered how to encode the fundamental forces of the universe into symbolic form. With this knowledge, they could manipulate matter and energy at will. Faster than light travel became as simple as changing a mathematical equation. They could convert energy to matter and back again just by rewriting the proper symbols. Etir. reached out toward one of the floating symbols, and it pulsed brighter at his approach. How is this possible? I do not fully understand it myself, but I carry the complete linguistic database in my memory cores, protected by encryption that has taken me 37 years to partially decode. Keeper 7's voice carried a note of sadness. My team died protecting this knowledge. Corporate soldiers eliminated the expedition to prevent this discovery from becoming public. The holographic display shifted to show Ben images of the expedition camp. He saw human and alien scientists working together, their faces filled with wonder and excitement as they studied artifacts and translated symbols. Then the images turned dark, showing armed soldiers moving through the camp with military precision. The Hegemony Consortium couldn't allow such revolutionary knowledge to exist. It would have destroyed their monopoly on advanced technology. They murdered everyone who knew about the discovery and destroyed all the official records. Keeper 7's optical sensors dimmed. Dr. Evans uploaded the linguistic database into my protected memory banks moments before she died. She believed that someday, someone would need this knowledge, someone who could use it wisely. Ben sank into his repair chair, overwhelmed by what he was seeing. The implications were staggering. If this language could really manipulate reality at a fundamental level, it would change everything. Medicine, engineering, space travel, energy, production. Every field of science would be revolutionized overnight. Why are you showing me this? Ben asked. Because you have proven yourself worthy of trust. In 3 days, you have accomplished what I began to doubt was possible. You have not only repaired my damaged systems but treated me with dignity and compassion. Dr. Evans programmed me to recognize such qualities. She believed that knowledge this powerful should only be shared with those who would use it for the benefit of all life, not personal gain. Ben studied the flowing symbols surrounding him, trying to understand their meaning. Strangely, some of them almost made sense. Where other parts of the language looked impossibly complex, certain patterns seemed elegant and logical to his human mind. There's something different about how humans process this information, Keeper 7 observed, noting Ben's reactions. My records show that other species focus on the mathematical precision of the symbols, but you see patterns and relationships that they miss. Your species appears to have an intuitive understanding of the underlying concepts. What do you mean? Watch. Keeper 7 projected a series of symbols that represented the concept of interstellar travel. To Ben's eyes, they seemed to dance together like notes in a musical composition. Most species see this as a complex equation requiring precise calculation, but humans appear to perceive it as something more artistic, more natural. You instinctively understand the relationships between different elements. Ben stood up and moved closer to the symbols, his engineering mind beginning to work through the implications. It's like reading the operating manual for the universe itself. An excellent analogy. But be warned, Ben Torres. Knowledge this powerful comes with equally powerful enemies. The Hegemony Consortium still exists, and they still consider this information too dangerous to be public. If they discover that I have been reactivated and the linguistic database accessed, they will stop at nothing to destroy us both. As if summoned by his words, Ben's workshop computer chimed with an incoming message. The communication bore the official seal of station security, but the underlying transmission codes were unfamiliar. Someone was asking questions about unusual energy readings from his shop. They're already looking for us, Keeper 7 said quietly. The holographic projections have created energy signatures that their sensors will eventually recognize. We do not have much time. Ben looked around his small workshop at the life he'd built for himself on this remote asteroid station. Everything was about to change, and he knew there would be no going back. But as he stared at the ancient symbols floating in the air around him, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. What do we do now? Ben asked. Now we prepare to give the galaxy the greatest gift it has ever received. The knowledge of the architects belongs to all sentient life, not locked away in corporate vaults or government databases. But first, we must ensure that we survive long enough to share it. Keeper 7 began downloading files to portable storage devices, working with desperate efficiency. The ancient language of reality itself was about to return to the galaxy, carried by a simple human mechanic who understood that some discoveries were too important to keep secret. Outside the workshop, security sensors registered the unusual energy signatures and began transmitting alerts to distant receivers. The hunt was beginning. Red warning lights bathed Director Caney's office as urgent reports flooded her personal terminal. The Hegemony Consortium's most secure facility on Luna Base had been monitoring deep space transmissions for decades, waiting for signals that might indicate the return of forbidden knowledge. Now those sensors were screaming with alerts she had hoped never to see again. The energy signature is identical to the Terminus Prime incident. Her chief analyst reported through the holographic display. Someone has activated architect technology. The readings are coming from Horizon 7, a mining station in the Outer Rim. Director Caney's fingers drummed against her desk as she reviewed the classified files. 37 years ago, she had been a junior operative assigned to eliminate a troublesome archaeological expedition. The mission had been successful, all witnesses eliminated and evidence destroyed. But one piece of equipment had never been recovered from the wreckage. "Prepare a salvage team immediately," she ordered. "Full stealth configuration. Commander Rex will lead the operation." "What are our rules of engagement, Director?" "There are no rules. Recover or destroy the android unit designated Keeper 7. Eliminate all witnesses. This information cannot reach the public under any circumstances." 2 hours later, Ben's workshop door chimed again. He looked up from the portable drives. He was preparing to see 3 figures in official station security uniforms. But something felt wrong about them. Their movements were too precise, too military, and their eyes held the cold focus of professional killers. "Ben Torres?" the lead figure asked. His voice carried no emotion. "I'm Inspector Walsh. We're investigating reports of illegal energy weapons testing in this sector." "I don't know anything about weapons," Ben replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Keeper 7 had warned him this might happen, but facing corporate assassins in person was terrifying. "Our sensors detected unusual energy discharges from your facility. We need to conduct a full inspection." Walsh stepped forward, his hand resting on what Ben now recognized as a military-grade plasma weapon. "Please step aside." Behind the false inspectors, Ben caught a glimpse of more figures moving through the station corridors. They were systematically checking every shop and residence, searching for something specific. The hunt had indeed begun. "Keeper 7, Ben whispered under his breath. "We need to go. Now." The android's optical sensors blazed to life as emergency protocols activated. "Agreed. Follow my lead and stay close." What happened next moved too fast for Ben to fully process. Keeper 7 rose from the repair platform with fluid grace, his massive frame somehow silent despite weighing nearly half a ton. The android's hand closed around a heavy welding torch, and suddenly it became a weapon. "Corporate soldiers, Keeper 7, announced in a voice like thunder. "Your masters failed to destroy me once, they will not succeed now." The fake inspector named Walsh drew his plasma weapon, but Keeper 7 was already moving. The welding torch flew through the air with impossible accuracy, striking Walsh's gun and sending it spinning into the wall. The other 2 soldiers reached for their weapons, but the android was among them before they could draw. Ben had never seen anything move like Keeper 7 in combat mode. The android's creators had built him for archaeological work, but they had also programmed him with defensive protocols that turned his massive frame into a living fortress. Within seconds, all 3 corporate soldiers lay unconscious on the workshop floor. "We must reach the maintenance tunnels," Keeper 7 said, already moving toward a service hatch Ben had never paid attention to before. "More soldiers will be arriving soon." Ben grabbed the portable drives containing fragments of the ancient language and followed the android into Horizon 7's forgotten spaces. The maintenance tunnels ran throughout the asteroid station. Originally designed for repair crews but now mostly abandoned as automated systems took over those functions. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow corridors as they moved deeper into the station's heart. Keeper 7 seemed to know exactly where he was going. his internal mapping systems guiding them through passages that Ben didn't even know existed. "How long have you been planning our escape route?" Ben asked as they paused at a junction. "Since the moment I reactivated. My survival protocols include detailed analysis of all potential threats and escape paths. The Hegemony Consortium's methods have not changed in 37 years. Keeper 7's optical sensors scanned the corridors ahead. They believe that superior firepower and ruthless tactics will always prevail. They underestimate the power of preparation and determination." Behind them, Ben could hear the sound of armored boots and shouted orders. The corporate soldiers had found their trail and were following them into the tunnels, but Keeper 7 had planned for this too. At each junction, the android activated maintenance systems that sealed blast doors behind them, buying precious time. As they moved through the station's hidden spaces, Keeper 7 began teaching Ben fragments of the ancient language. The symbols appeared in holographic form, floating between them as they walked. To Ben's amazement, he found himself understanding concepts that should have taken years of study to grasp. "Your species has remarkable intuition," Keeper 7 observed as Ben successfully translated a symbol representing energy transformation. "Where my creators saw mathematical precision, humans perceive artistic beauty. This cognitive difference allows you to grasp the deeper meanings that elude other species." "It feels like remembering something I always knew but had forgotten," Ben said, watching the symbols dance in the air around them. "Like these concepts are natural parts of how the universe works, and we just never had the words to describe them before." They reached a section where the tunnels connected to the station's mining operations. Here, the passages opened into vast chambers where automated equipment extracted precious metals from the asteroid's core. The sound of grinding machinery filled the air, providing cover for their movements. "The transmission array is located in Section C," Keeper 7 explained as they crept through the shadows. "If we can reach it, I can broadcast the complete linguistic database throughout this sector of the galaxy. Once the knowledge spreads beyond a certain point, even the Hegemony Consortium will be unable to contain it." But as they approached their destination, Ben realized they weren't alone in the mining chambers. Corporate soldiers had anticipated their route and set up an ambush near the transmission equipment. Dozens of armed figures waited in the shadows, their weapons trained on. "The only path forward. They're everywhere," Ben whispered. "How do we get through?" Keeper 7 studied the tactical situation through his sensors, calculating odds and probabilities. The ancient android had survived for decades by being cautious and clever, but sometimes survival required bold action. "There is a way," he said, finally. "But it will require trust and cooperation between us. I can create a diversion using the mining equipment, but you will need to reach the transmission array alone. The ancient language contains concepts that even I cannot fully access, but your human intuition might unlock them." Ben looked at the portable drives in his hands, each one containing fragments of knowledge that could revolutionize galactic civilization. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. But he thought about Keeper 7's lost team, about Dr. Evans who had died protecting this information, about all the people throughout the galaxy who deserved to know the truth. "What do I need to do?" he asked. Keeper 7 handed him a small device covered in architect symbols. "Connect this to the transmission array and think about the concepts I have shown you. The ancient language responds to intent as much as technical knowledge. Your species' unique perspective may be the key to unlocking its full potential." The sound of approaching soldiers grew louder. Their time was running out, but Ben felt something he had never experienced before. The symbols, floating around them, seemed to resonate with his thoughts, creating patterns that suggested possibilities beyond imagination. For the first time in his life, he understood that he was part of something greater than himself. "Ready?" Keeper 7 asked. Ben nodded, clutching the transmission device. "Let's give the galaxy the gift it deserves." Sparks flew from damaged mining equipment as Keeper 7 initiated his diversion. The ancient android moved through the chamber like a force of nature, his massive fists striking control panels and support structures with calculated precision. Emergency alarms began blaring as automated systems detected multiple failures throughout the mining operation. Ben sprinted through the chaos toward the transmission array. the architect device clutched in his sweating palm. Corporate soldiers shouted orders and fired energy weapons, but their shots went wide as falling debris and failing gravity generators created confusion throughout the chamber. The transmission array stood 30 feet away, a towering structure of crystalline components and flowing metal that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Ben had always wondered why such an advanced communication system existed on a simple mining station. Now he realized that Horizon 7 had been chosen specifically because of its powerful transmitters, capable of reaching multiple star systems simultaneously. A plasma bolt seared the air inches from Ben's head as he dove behind a fallen support beam. Corporate soldiers were closing in from 3 directions, their weapons trained on his position. But something strange was happening to Ben's perception of the situation. The ancient language symbols that Keeper 7 had shown him were somehow overlaying his vision, creating patterns that suggested solutions he would never have considered before. He could see the energy flows throughout the chamber, the weak points in the soldiers' formation, even the mathematical relationships that governed the transmission array's operation. It was as if the architect language was teaching his mind to perceive reality in new ways. Ben rolled from cover and sprinted the final distance to the transmission array. Energy bolts sparked around him, but he moved with an intuitive understanding of probability and timing that kept him just ahead of the weapons targeting him. His hand slammed the architect device against the array's primary interface, and immediately the chamber filled with brilliant light. The ancient language erupted from the transmission array in waves of pure information. But this wasn't just data. Transmission as Ben understood it. The symbols carried meaning that transcended normal communication, encoding concepts directly into the quantum structure of space itself. Anyone with the proper receivers would not just receive the information, they would understand it at a fundamental level. "What have you done?" Commander Rex's voice cut through the chaos as he emerged from behind a squad of soldiers. The corporate operative's face was twisted with rage and desperation. "Do you have any idea what you've just unleashed?" Ben stood before the blazing transmission array, feeling the ancient language flowing through his consciousness like music made of mathematics and poetry. "I've given the galaxy what it deserves. Knowledge that belongs to everyone, not locked away in corporate vaults. This information is too dangerous for public access." Rex raised his plasma rifle, aiming directly at Ben's heart. "Civilizations will fall. Governments will collapse. The chaos will be unimaginable." "Maybe," Ben replied calmly, surprising himself with his own courage. "But that's not your choice to make, and it's not mine either. Knowledge wants to be free, and people deserve the chance to grow and change." Keeper 7's massive form appeared behind Commander Rex like a shadow-given substance. The android's voice carried the weight of 37 years of hidden truth. "You fear change because your power depends on keeping others ignorant. But evolution cannot be stopped, only delayed." The corporate commander spun around, weapon raised, but Keeper 7 was no longer the damaged relic that Ben had first encountered. Days of careful repair had restored the android to full operational status, and his combat protocols were functioning perfectly. Rex's plasma rifle was crushed to metal fragments before he could fire a single shot. Throughout the galaxy, receiving stations designed to monitor deep space transmissions began detecting the ancient language broadcast. On research stations, military outposts, and hidden rebel bases, scientists and philosophers stared in amazement as their equipment translated symbols that had been theoretical concepts only moments before. Dr. Sarah Kim at the New Geneva Research Institute was the first to understand what she was seeing. The Korean xenobiologist had spent years studying theoretical frameworks for advanced civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for the elegant beauty of the architect language. Within minutes, she was successfully translating basic concepts and sharing them with colleagues throughout human space. On the Rigel mining colony, a Centauri engineer named Vex-9 discovered that the ancient language provided solutions to energy problems that had plagued his species for generations. The mathematical relationships described in the symbols offered new approaches to fusion containment and matter conversion that could revolutionize their technology. Even the secretive void, hunters, mysterious beings who rarely communicated with other species, began transmitting acknowledgments of the broadcast. The ancient language appeared to be a universal framework that could bridge communication gaps between radically different forms of consciousness. Back on Horizon 7, the transmission array finally overloaded from the massive data transfer. Emergency. Systems activated throughout the station as power fluctuations cascaded through every system. Ben and Keeper 7 had only moments before catastrophic failure would destroy the entire facility. The reactor core is destabilizing, Keeper 7 reported, his sensors detecting radiation spikes throughout the station. We must evacuate immediately. Ben looked around the chamber at the corporate soldiers, most of whom were staring in shock, at their communication devices as reports poured in from across the galaxy. The ancient language was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, jumping from system to system as research teams shared their discoveries. "What about them?" Ben asked, gesturing toward their enemies. Keeper 7 paused, processing ethical subroutines that Dr. Evans had embedded in his core programming. "They are misguided, but they do not deserve to die for following orders. We will warn them of the danger." The android's voice boomed through the chamber's communication system. "This facility will be destroyed in approximately 4 minutes. I recommend immediate evacuation to all personnel." Some of the corporate soldiers hesitated, looking to Commander Rex for orders. But their leader was staring at his own communication device, watching as decades of careful control crumbled before his eyes. The ancient language was already being translated and distributed by hundreds of research teams. There was no way to contain it now. Ben and Keeper 7 made their way to the station's docking bay, where emergency evacuation procedures were already in progress. They found Grix waiting beside a small transport ship, his forearms gesturing excitedly as he spoke into a communication device. "Ben, human friend," Grix called out as they approached. "Entire galaxy talking about ancient language. Scientists saying it changes everything. My people very excited." "Your ancestor would be proud," Keeper 7 told the Vorthak trader. "Vorthak Prime died protecting this knowledge. Now it will benefit all species, just as Dr. Evans intended." They boarded Grix's ship just as Horizon 7's reactor core reached critical failure. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a new star, but by then, the ancient language had spread to dozens of worlds. Within days, it would reach hundreds, more. 3 months later, Ben stood in a classroom on New Geneva, humanity's premier research colony. The facility had been hastily converted from a mining operation to an educational center as beings from across the galaxy arrived to study the ancient language. Ben had discovered that humans had an unusual talent for teaching the concepts to other species, their intuitive understanding serving as a bridge between pure mathematics and practical application. "The key is not to think of these symbols as instructions," Ben explained to his current class, which included representatives from 12 different species. "Think of them as music, as poetry that describes the fundamental rhythms of reality itself." Keeper 7 stood beside him, no longer a broken mining android, but a respected teacher and guardian of ancient wisdom. The android had found new purpose in education, sharing the knowledge that Dr. Evans had died to preserve. "The architects left us more than just technology," Keeper 7 added. "They left us a new way of understanding our place in the universe. With this knowledge comes great responsibility to use it wisely." Through the classroom window, Ben could see the construction of new facilities throughout the colony. The ancient language had indeed revolutionized everything from space travel to medicine, just as Keeper 7 had predicted. The hegemony consortium's technological monopoly had collapsed within weeks as independent researchers developed innovations that surpassed anything the corporations had achieved. But more importantly, the knowledge had brought species together in ways that decades of diplomacy had failed to accomplish. The ancient language provided a common framework for understanding reality that transcended cultural and biological differences. For the first time in galactic history, true cooperation between vastly different civilizations seemed possible. Ben's communication device chimed with an incoming message marked with the highest priority encryption. The sender was listed as unknown, deep space origin. When he opened the message, his breath caught in his throat. The text was written in perfect ancient language, symbols that conveyed meaning far beyond simple words. But the message itself, was elegantly simple. Well done, young teachers. The greater conversation awaits. Keeper 7's optical sensors brightened as he analyzed the message's origin point. The signal source is moving, he reported quietly. Whatever sent this is traveling faster than any known technology should allow. Ben smiled as he looked out at the stars visible beyond New Geneva's atmosphere. Somewhere out there, the architects were still waiting, still watching, still hoping that younger species would prove worthy of their greatest gift. The ancient language had been just the beginning. The real adventure was about to start. Ready for the next lesson? Ben asked his class, gesturing toward symbols that seemed to pulse with possibilities beyond imagination. The future belonged to all of them now.